It's Wednesday. We are live. I forgot it's Wednesday already, and it's time for a live stream. We're kind of wedging this one into this week because, well, it's Wednesday and we like to have fun. I am your host, John Townsend. Behind the bar, I'm joined by...
Hello.
Ryan.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, Are you enjoying yourself?
I'm happy boy.
You got a drink? No?
Yeah,
Good.
I do.
Good. Oh, darn.
Right here in my trusty old Nutmeg Tavern mug.
Okay, and doing all the technical stuff on the other side of all that is Aaron.
Hello, everyone.
There he is. Good job, Aaron.
Thank you. Everybody likes your new hat, John.
Yes, they do.
Well,
What are you wearing? What is this?
Today, we just finished up coming out from the homestead area, and we've spent all day making bricks, and so I didn't have time to really get dressed in anything else. Ryan did clean himself up a bit. He looked like he had been rolling in the mud.
Yes, I did.
So, but it was man. I think this video is going to be really good. We had a lot of fun today making bricks, and we're going to talk about making bricks a little bit because it's on my mind. What can I say?
Making bricks. What a fun time.
It was good. We had Ivy out there, and Ryan was helping, and Brandon was helping, and I was making bricks, and well, Aaron didn't really help. He didn't make any bricks at all.
I just pressed record on the camera and sat around.
Like, it's mindless work, really.
Yeah,
right?
really.
Yeah, pretty
Anyone
mindless.
could do it.
Pretty mindless. Before I jump into the topic, Ryan, do you have anything for me? Excuse me. No. Okay, so no, he doesn't. I've got a little bit that I want to read out of the diary of Matthew Patton. He wrote this diary about sort of his daily transactional business, the kinds of things he was doing from 1754 through 1788. He was up in New Hampshire, and he wrote a couple sections about making bricks. I thought it was just massively interesting because of, well, number one, he's writing this. By the time he's writing this, he's 62 years old. He is not a laboring kind of guy. He is a sort of justice of the peace. He does lawyery kind of stuff. He does surveying, but he also has his homestead and does some farming things. He's a wheeler dealer. And at this point, it seems like the first reference here really to making bricks, he's 62 years old. He's probably got I think he talks about his son here helping him. Let's see, let me find the first. His references start as early as July. And I think, here it's like July 16th in 1782. He says, I brought home a load of clay from the little meadow. He keeps referencing bringing home clay. Interestingly, he's not working with it right where it's at, but he's filling up a wagon with clay. By September 2nd, he writes, brought home a load of boards, and then on the 4th, and then he brings home two more loads of clay. And then right here about the 9th, he talks about making molds. So he's been bringing home clay for, how many, weeks and weeks. And then he says, I went to making molds. And then they start making bricks. Let's see if I can find it here. On the 12th, Major Joffe helped us strick brick. I don't know, it means striking bricks. In the afternoon, he went and measured somebody. He did some surveying. And then he says, on the 13th, James Martin Jr. helped us about the brick. He and Alex struck about 700 and turned up the brick, smoothing the yard. So that's like the 13th of August. He keeps talking about Alex and I worked at brick. We worked at brick the next day. We worked at brick. Finally, he gets to October. Alex and I struck off 1,500 brick. What do you think about that, Ryan?
That's a lot of brick.
1,500 bricks is a lot of bricks to make in one day. I'll tell you that. That is hard work. He's using lots of other people. On the 4th, Alex and I worked at brick. On the 5th, we worked at brick, and in the evening it rained a considerable heavy rain. We lost several hundred brick with it, and we made none after this fall. So they stop on the 5th of October making brick. So they've been making brick for about a month. On the 22nd, so 3 weeks later, Master Richardson came to set and burn brick, and then James Martin, Amos Martin, and Joseph McLaughlin helped. They were burning the brick until, let's see, the 25th, and then he talks about how much Master Richardson charged. So they made brick all that time. Then they cooked the brick for a couple of days after they let them all dry 3 weeks. Super interesting section. The next year he talks about making bricks again. That time he doesn't have somebody else come and set up the kiln for him. He has seen it done. He does it all for himself. So it's interesting, sort of later in his career as someone, I'm going to set up and I'm going to start making brick in this community. A couple of years earlier, he'd been buying brick from other people. So really interesting to see how that works out and how he sort of takes on the idea of making bricks. Let's look at a couple of pictures. I just have a 5 or 6 pictures here. A couple of them we've seen before. This was us today. Notice there's a whole group of people. Some of them are tired, sitting down. There's children working. There's women working. There's some people are working hard. They're working clay. They're molding the bricks. They're laying out the bricks to dry. Go to the next one. This is a section where they're working, they're like getting clay. So up there on the top there, they've got a horse. It's going through a pug mill, and it's working up the clay, making it smooth. And down here, we've got men loading up bricks. Go to the next one. This is an earlier woodcut. And you can see, I love the way the artist has gotten the mood here. They're in a hurry. The one child there is running back to go get another brick mold, and there's the man working at the molding station. Somebody's carrying moving a brick there. It's a kind of industry that lots of people, whole families are going to be working at. Kids are working in that situation. I think they're building the kiln here, and this is something we'll be doing in the future, where they're building up a kiln out of green brick to fire the brick themselves. So it's a real interesting process in that you sort of, the thing how you cook the brick is made out of the brick itself. So it's fun process. Yeah, and here these guys are taking down the kiln after they're all finished, so they can sell them or use them in their project. So there's some quick brick art. There we go. Such a great project to work on. I'm excited to see. I'm really excited about the firing process. Whenever you do a pottery firing, and probably brick times 2, it's a real mystery about what you're going to get. Sometimes you'll do a firing and you might have made a mistake. You'll ruin everything. You'll lose it all, right? And or you'll get some really interesting accidents that happen. Something gets too hot and it does something you don't expect, and so you'll get some real interesting things happening. Anytime you get something up to 2,000 degrees and you let it set there, and you never know what you're going to get. And in these bricks, rocks are in there and branches, and you'll end up with fingerprints in it. Some of them have interesting cracks, and they're so compared to modern bricks today, which are just uniform, chunked out of a factory. Every single brick is the same. They are each and every one sort of like its own little work of art when you realize just how much work goes into hand making a brick, how much time it takes from the processing the clay, which you might have done the fall before, forming up the bricks, letting them dry, firing the bricks, just a great fun process. Where's Ryan going?
I'm doing here.
Oh!
Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Somebody was talking about the exploded brick
Yeah.
in the chat, and we've had a couple of. There was one instance where, because we started making bricks like 6 weeks ago, something like that.
Oh yeah,
8
and
weeks
more.
at least. And there have been a couple of times when we've been at the store working, all of a sudden it's like, wait, it's not supposed to rain. It's raining.
Yeah.
And has to rush.
Did you lose your mic?
Yeah, I might have.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
figure
way
it
on the
out.
ground somewhere.
Okay.
So this is one of our tests. One of my test bricks that was early on. Is you can see it's all crumbly, made out of the wrong kind of tempering material. We put the wrong kind of sand in there, and the sand after it burns is hygroscopic. Some of the materials in there absorbs moisture, expands, and then the brick just it disintegrates. Also, this brick was heated up very, very fast, and it sort of turned itself inside out, exploded. And also, I mean, you can see that. See the discoloration in this? This had a rock in it, and that rock turned to sort of molten whatever. It's got a whole different color. So, I mean, just never know what's going on with this. Yeah, this you couldn't have gotten more of a failure of brick than this particular one. But interesting nonetheless. Nonetheless, I wonder what kind of rock that was that did that great color. It looks like lava that happened in there, and still there it is, a brick, and you can hear it. Just sort of like, okay, that. Can't build a house out of that brick. So fun, a fun process. They're working on audio back there. Let me think about where I'm going to go with this. Building the kiln for firing these bricks is one of those. I had just tremendous conversation a couple of days ago with Tony Mugridge. Tony Mugridge over in England, or he's in the north of England, I think. He can't do it anymore, the last sort of itinerant and handmade brickmaker, kind of as a single man working in England. There is a firm that still does handmade brick in England, and you can still find handmade brick made in other parts of the world, obviously. India is a big place where they still do handmade bricks. Just a fascinating topic, especially when you get to, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make some of these bricks, and then, what are we gonna do with them? What are we gonna be able to build with them after we get done with them? So, what do you think, Ryan? Are you back together? Are you functional?
Here I am.
We're good.
Good.
Here I am.
Yep.
Yeah, there are a few questions, not really very many. So people are wondering if there are particular recipes for different kinds of bricks.
Well, there's certainly different sorts of brick. It's kind of the bricks we were doing were slop molded, where you use a very loose clay, soft. You force it into these molds pretty easily. You slam it down into there, and then they come out, and they're very, very soft. And then there are bricks that you would mold with a much stiffer clay, and you have to pound it into the mold, and then you might even have to wait a little bit to get them back out of the mold. Or you have a special mold that you can force the brick out of and then set it aside. So some bricks are just amazingly, they are works of art. They've been molded in their special shape. It isn't just a brick. There's a great YouTube of Tony Mugridge doing a brick for a Tudor chimney, and each brick is curved with a special design on it. And when it gets made into its chimney, I'm just blown away by the look of it. It's just such a neat design, and that was like Tudor, so very, very earlier than our 18th century time period. So truly amazing brickwork that's going on in 17th and 16th century in England. We were just doing simple kind of on the frontier bricks, and that was happening here all over in North America, all through that 18th and 19th century time period. Someone wants to build a house. Hey, we need brick for our chimney, and they just set up right on the spot, found the nicest local clay, or maybe even not. It's like, well, whatever in the yard, that's going to be good enough. They would make the bricks right there, fire them in a small kiln that they would build up out of the bricks themselves, and make that chimney. And they might be very low quality bricks, but they got the job done, and they didn't have to haul bricks in from a long way away. And bricks are a real heavy thing to be able to transport. So it's really nice to be able to just set up and make the bricks right where you're at.
So are there bricks with holes or no holes?
Yeah, all the handmade bricks mostly that you see in this time period, they're all solid bricks. There's no holes. Holes will make them dry out faster and more evenly, but that seems to be, at least as far as I can tell, something that's fairly industrial. When they're being extruded in the 19th century out of different kinds of machinery in 19th and 20th century, when you get to that industrial revolution part where they start to design machines so that people basically just take the finished brick out of the machine and set it off to dry.
Blue clay, red clay, what are you working with, and what works best?
You can make bricks out of lots of different kinds of clay. When the clay that we're working with has a clay right around here is just kind of a nasty brown color. That's some of those things that make a clay one kind of a color or another where you're at before they're fired. A lot of that's just an organic thing that's going on, different kinds of chemicals that as soon as you fire the brick, those all disappear. And your brick will be a color depending on, there are buff clays when they fire that don't look buff when they start out. This turns into a dark red clay or a dark red brick, and this starts out as just sort of a buff color. But the iron turns into iron oxide when it gets fired and turns into a red clay brick. Usually bricks that are very high temperature, fire brick, those are a very white when they're finished baking, but they might look like a gray clay when you're actually making them.
So what about the heat that you're shooting for in the firing process?
Yeah, so anything that's going to be a red clay brick is a lower fired brick. The iron oxide that's in this that turns it that red color, it will really start to flux and melt the brick if you go up past about 2,000 degrees. Bad things start to happen. You can cook them pretty hot, like a lot of street bricks that we've got around here that all the streets used to be paved with. They were cooked about as high as you can get that red clay, and they start to turn purple. If you go past that, they almost turn into a glass, and they get very brittle and they're not.
It's kind of funny how purple they go.
Yeah,
like
right.
When I used to make the clay pipes downstairs, I fired them too hot, and man, they almost blue purple. It was crazy how far they'd go.
Right. And there are some different sorts of things. I mean, the temperature of the clays and what the chemical reaction that's going on inside the kiln, whether or not it's a reduction fire or an oxidation fire, will also change the coloration. And when we fire, we'll use wood, different sorts of chemicals in the wood, or even if they're like nails, that will flash different colors onto the bricks. So these hand-fired bricks in a wood-fired kiln is definitely going to be a much more varied coloration than your typical bricks today.
Somebody asked, so there are two questions that kind of work together. Well, did the bricks corrode quickly back then? And if you found bricks from back then today, could you still use them?
Well, it depends on how high quality the bricks are. A lot of the bricks done in the time period are fairly soft, and they do break down over time, and can break down very quickly. So moisture, if the brick can breathe, if it hasn't been fired too hot, then it will absorb moisture, and then every time it freezes and thaws, it'll just start to, make the brick go away. The building we're in right this second, probably made in the 1880s, a lot of brick is breaking down, and will just start to flake away. And that's that's only 120, 140 years later. So if you look at a 200-year-old brick, maybe it's already disintegrated into powder, but then some of those high quality bricks probably as good today as they were when they were made.
Somebody asks, is brick making excuse me, similar to making clay pipe, not the tobacco kind, but the water kind?
Yeah, I'm wondering about clay pipes being made in the 18th century. I believe that at the Winston-Salem site down in North Carolina, where the Moravian settlement was, early on they made wooden pipes to move water throughout the town. You imagine they were actually delivering water to, running water to different houses, and they had wooden pipes for quite a while. And then I believe the potter was starting to make clay pipes, and I'm not sure if they were turned clay pipes, like on a wheel, which I believe was what they were doing, or molded. But when we think of clay pipes today, that's extruded, high pressure, and they squeeze it out like a Play-Doh pumper machine, right? So that's happening industrially here in the 19th century. But what's happening early on with clay pipes are probably all done by hand.
So what is how do they keep bricks that have been fired from being ruined by water?
That haven't been?
That have been.
Well,
so hardened brick,
yeah.
How much can it hold up against general rainfall? That hand bricks.
Yeah. So once it's been fired, if it's been fired to the proper temperature, it can hack the weather pretty well and should not disintegrate too badly. But if it's a fairly soft brick, then it will absorb moisture, and then that freezing and thawing cycle will really start to work on it. And you will protect your bricks by, when you make the wall, by the way it's mortared. So your mortar joints, you want to make them so that they make sure to shed the water as best they can, and the overhang on your building and all that good stuff. So it's like bricks that are at the foundation level, those you want to have really good bricks so that they don't absorb moisture and break down quickly.
If a bad, cheap builder in the time period built a public building poorly while pocketing money, did the public have recourse? Dishonesty in building codes, that sort of thing.
Well, I'll bet you that a lot of dishonesty went on with that, and I have never seen anything where those builders got in trouble.
Wow, somebody, Roscoe was in the chat, said the town they grew up in had wooden water pipes.
Yeah, you'll still hear about some sort of situations in so many towns, even this town, where the pipes, who knows how, and they aren't that, they aren't old like that. All the maps for where the pipes have gone are lost, and so it's like an archaeological dig sometimes. It's like, well, their water main broke someplace. Well, we're just going to have to go start digging and see what we find. And sometimes you'll find, towns talk about wow, we found wooden pipes that are still functioning under the ground, and because they aren't using like super high pressure or anything like that.
What's going on with mortar?
Yeah, so mortar in the time period, a lot of time, well, it's all like a lime mortar, which is very different from the Portland cement style mortar that we're using today. It's softer. It's actually a little, it bounces back from issues that today's mortar won't. So a lot, if you read about historical building and fixing the brick buildings, they should, at least whenever possible, use lime mortar instead. It looks different, it acts different. So mortar is just studying that is a great, fun, and interesting topic as you see how they act differently.
Okay, I think I need to do some catch up on Super Chat.
Okay.
Ryan Mercer was the first one in. He says, "Yay, Wednesday stream."
Thank you.
David Donnelly, thanks for the great content. I love the extra live stream.
Thank you.
Aaron Howitt, is brickmaking specialized skill that required specialized craftsmen, or is it something kind of everyone would have at least a basic knowledge of?
Yeah, so that was a question I had right away, and it looks like Matthew Patton here, he didn't seem to have any problem with figuring out what was going on with how to make the brick, but obviously he needed help with the firing of the brick. So same deal with me. It's like, oh, I can figure out that, but I immediately said, oh, I'm gonna call up somebody who's done this before. So I call up Tony Mugridge and say, Tony, how do I do this? If I only have this many brick, how am I going to do that? So that's kind of a specialized knowledge part that you need to have, the building of the kiln to fire the bricks. So I said, now I wonder how would I find out about the knowledge of making bricks, and is that something that's so highly skilled that they really need to have an apprentice? So I dug out this book real quick, The Record of Indentures. It's got the records from 1771 through 1773 of Philadelphia, and did a quick text search and said, did anybody apprentice to a brickmaker through those years? Because you'll find apprentices for everything in here, clock making and making saddles and wagons or blacksmithing, or all these different trades that are going on. Did anybody need an apprentice for brickmaking? No, you don't find any brickmaking apprentices in here. You do find bricklaying and masonry, that shows up in here, but not the actual making of the brick. So the making of the brick doesn't seem to be so skilled that anybody would put their child into that situation to train for. So I think that helps us get the idea that most people can figure it out, and it's probably one of those things that is, hey, there's nothing else I can do. I'll go work for the brickmaker for a while. It's a quick day labor kind of job, not a lot of skill there, but there is the need for a lot of labor.
People are very, they're kind of tied to this recipe idea.
Oh, yeah.
Where you got your recipe, was there just like one basic recipe, or did it vary for regions?
Well, the recipe is, what kind of clay am I using? And that is the trick, because there's not a lot to it. Different kind of clays might need different sort of tempers. So different sort of additions. Oh, you should be using this kind of sand to mix with that clay. That will make a better brick. This kind of clay is going to make a brick, and that kind of clay is not going to make a brick. Or this is the kind of brick that will withstand 2,500 degrees, and that clay will melt and turn into a blob at that. So that's the only kind of recipe that you've got. Or am I using the right kind of clay, or what do I need to do to this clay to make it work for this job?
Somebody asked about, it's a great question. Can you explain the difference between a brick material and a cob material?
So, when we're doing a cob situation, which is sort of like a green brick, unfired building material, we're mixing clay, we're mixing sand. We don't really need to worry about the sand. It doesn't have to, it isn't undergoing any kind of strange temperature. So any old sand will usually work just fine. We want a clay that binds really well. Again, we don't care in a cob situation whether the clay is a high temperature clay or a low temperature clay. We just need it to be nice and sticky. And we also are adding things like a binder, grass, straw, depending on what we're building with cob. So it's a much less demanding clay. So we can use anything, basically anything that works out. And in some situations, you'll have a mix of sand and clay right where you're at, and you hardly have to add anything to it at all. It's like, it's pretty much ready to go right out of the ground. Mix a little straw with it, boom. It's basically for cob, it's all about how can I mix this so that when it dries, it doesn't shrink too much in my situation. On a brick, if the brick shrinks, well, that's okay. We want to make sure, though, with a brick that the fired results are all the same uniform size. And in Massachusetts, or even Massachusetts laws in the 17th century, that's the 1600s. I mean, Massachusetts started in 1620, right? So not very long into the history of Massachusetts, they're already writing laws that say bricks are supposed to be this size. And brick makers need to make sure their molds have metal on them so that they don't wear out and your bricks change size over the lifespan of the mold. So they were very, very cognizant of how much that's going to shrink and how that's going to work out. And with our cob, it's nothing like that. It's so much quicker and easier, and we're not really concerned with that kind of thing.
So bricks can be made without straw. Can cob be made without straw?
Cob can be made without straw. It just isn't. It isn't quite as strong in the situation, and you'll get different kinds of cracks and whatnot.
And I think it also depends on the application. I'm not sure that like in the making of the chimney.
Yeah.
I don't know how far we would have gotten without straw being in there for a binder. It would fall apart really badly.
Right.
And just in chinking and daubing in general.
Yes, right. Especially in those kinds of situations. And as it rains, even on a cob oven or in the situation on the cabin where rain is going to hit that cob, it'll wash away the clay on the very outside edge, but then the straw is there and it sort of protects the clay that's underneath it. So you'll see sections where, cob will get rain on it, and, the straw does a job of protecting those under layers. They still get damaged, they wash away, but.
Okay, so back to Super Chat real quick. I left off. Okay, serial number YM63. Yes, so glad. Well, I lost it. Oh, no. Somebody else put one in there. Okay, so glad to see this. I'll listen tomorrow at work. Keep up the great work and stay safe.
Yes.
Thank you. Reagan Carson, do you know how to brew from a tea brick? Please help.
So brewing from a tea brick. So we talked about tea bricks Friday, didn't we? Last Friday. When on tea bricks, what you do is you actually take something like a grater and you just grate off this section. You can scrape it with a knife, whatever it does to break that brick down into a smaller section. And probably you only need about maybe half of the quantity that you would use in a loose tea situation because it's already been compressed. So you're getting more tea than you're getting tea in a loose tea setting. So
unless you want that kick tea.
That's for sure. It'll kick you right out of the room.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, so you grate that up. It's going to be fine, though. You're going to get a lot of dust, so you need a very fine filter material, or expect it to settle, and you'll probably be drinking tea grounds. There you go.
Tea grounds. Okay. Denise Maloney Pyron is on Super Chat. Wow, I never catch these midweek chats.
You did
coin
it
for the bartender.
I
love that.
I'm not
Everybody's
sure.
taking good care of the bartender. Okay, Barclay Jenkins, I know y'all are busy with many other pursuits, but I still want to see those canoes go down a river.
Yes. Yeah, we are. We're doing our best to get, and we've been planning a different kind of an idea for a canoe episode. What is that? Mid September. We're working on that.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, or somewhere in the beginning of October.
You know, there's not nearly as much of the year left as I want it to
Well,
be.
yeah, it's just like half the year disappeared on us this year.
What is going on?
Yeah. We have a new member on YouTube.
Good.
It is Milo,
Thank you.
and maybe the Milo from Descendants. That would be cool. And Wendy Carr is in Super Chat. Thanks for the extra joy. And then also another new member. It was Max 15.
Max 15.
So thank you. And I think Milo was asking about horsehair. Yeah, I think in the Cheeking Daubing video at Martin Station, they used horsehair as a binder too, right?
Did they?
Pretty-
Maybe he talked about it.
At least talked about it, yeah, right.
Right. So, horsehair. I mean, even plaster. If you look at plaster in the 20th century, they're using all kinds of strange things like horsehair and cow hair. Boy, that's such a binder. When you get that into a plaster mix or you get it into cob, it is very fine and very strong. So those fine materials like that can make a very, very sturdy material when you add them in.
So people are asking about John's hat and John's shirt. And yes, they are both available on the website. The hat is a wool blank that has been trimmed down so the brim's not as wide.
Yep.
But and the shirts are available in multiple sizes. As you can see, John and I are not the same size, but we wear the same shirt.
Right. So the same hat. I don't have a blank, but the same hat starts out as a blank. You can put the sides up. You can trim it with a pair of scissors, quick and easy. This one started out as a slouch hat that had one side up, and then it got rained on several million times, and it sort of shrank and did its own thing. But that's what hats did. So as your hat wore out, it became your work hat. It still kept the rain off your head. You were still more socially acceptable than if you were bareheaded. And you would sort of save these hats because hats are expensive in the time period. Well, they're expensive today. So, yes.
More on Super Chat. Let me go up here. Oh, gosh. Aaron Howitt, coin for John. Now, guys, the tip jar is over here. I'm just saying. Sir Philip, were bricks in the 18th century used for fireplaces at all, say a cabin, etc.? Also, do you guys got any in-person store? Oh, okay. Sorry, there's a typo. Yes, we have a brick and mortar store. Also, eggnog, did it exist? If so, was it popular? So, eggnog and brick and mortar store, yes.
Bricks and fireplaces.
Yes, there we go.
In cabins, I think most of the time in a cabin situation, that's sort of a speed build, not meant for a permanent setting. So generally, they're either made like ours was with logs and clay, or they might be a stone fireplace if they've got lots of stone to build that up, and sort of like, hey, bricks already made. They're round and weird, but let's use them. But by the later on, when you're doing your log house that's hewn timbers, you're going to be using bricks if at all possible. And bricks are going to last longer. If you got access to a small number of bricks, well, then you might just line the inside of your fireplace with them because they're going to be able to withstand the heat better than some different kinds of stone that you might use in your stone fireplace. And even today, you'll see, the exterior of a fireplace, and maybe the outer sections are going to be stone, and then the very center is lined with like fire brick, high temperature brick. Those are different. Oh, eggnog.
That search is rough.
Yeah.
I believe we found a source for the early. I feel like in the early 19th century
Yep.
is where we found an eggnog source, maybe around 1816, if I remember right.
Yeah, you're finding, I mean, they're using egg in drinks, but, you know, number one, the names of drinks they change a lot. And the same drink might have 3 different names or variations of them. It's a local thing, and I'm not sure about how far back we can get to eggnog and get to that same kind of thing. I mean, definitely using eggs in drinks, and we've done, which
Yes.
one was it?
Well,
Flip or was it?
It was Flip had egg, but we've also
Right.
done eggnog in the tavern.
Right.
I just don't remember when it was from.
Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
the rule of thumb is it has to be prior to 1830 for me to even consider using it in the tavern.
I
So,
remember it. I'm trying to remember when that was.
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe
Oh.
somebody will do a search.
How about this?
Yes.
Did natives use bricks at all?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
Well, there are some situations. If you read about the Moravians working with some of the tribes in Pennsylvania, then Ohio and Indiana, they were sort of there's anytime you try to answer a question about did Native Americans do X,
Yeah.
right? Whatever it is, there's a lot of different things, different ways that Native Americans were reacting to the European population as it comes in. And sometimes they were adopting all those things, and sometimes they were staying very, very separate. And so you can't just answer that question, monolithically in the generic easily. Or there are some segments that are like, yes, they're going to build very Western style homes, and they may have used bricks, but a majority of the tribes, I think, were really sticking with their own traditions, and they weren't using brick.
Okay. Let's talk about the industrialization of brickmaking.
So, I mean, anytime you've got a very, very labor-intensive operation like bricks, and you get to that early 19th century time period, people are working on mechanizing that, and there's a series of things going on with brickmaking where they're working on mechanizing that. Sometimes they're just mechanizing very small parts of the process. There's machines even in early on. You've got pug mills where you're mixing the clay with a horse, and basically it's like a giant wooden barrel that has a rod through the middle of it, and it's got knives that stick out of it, and you throw clay in it, and it just chops it up and makes it fine, smooths it out, and they'll use something like that just to prepare the clay, but everything is still done by hand. And then later on, they're making machines that just force clay into molds. And finally, as we go through that industrialized period, it's basically, well, shovel the clay in this side, and out on a conveyor belt comes all these wet clay bricks waiting to be dried and fired after a month or 2 months. And you'll see these wonderful pictures from the 19th century, 1850 through 1880, of these huge brickworks, and just thousands upon thousands of bricks. People are handling them, but they're in the drying part. They have a machine that's basically kicking these guys out.
Do you know when they started making brick cisterns?
No, I don't know. I would imagine it's fairly early, though. I wouldn't doubt. I mean, they're so related to wells, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a dry well where we're putting water into it. So the same idea of I'm gonna dig this big hole, and I'm gonna mortar it up with my bricks, and that's gonna hold that water in. And a cistern is just one that doesn't have a water source at the bottom. You put the water in the top.
So a lot of people are wondering about fieldstone, river rocks in the fireplace. There's the risk of explosion. How
Yeah.
much do you see that in the time period?
I've never, other than, possibly people talking about, oh, you should be careful of what kind of rock you use, but I think that's a pretty commonly known thing in the time period, and most people that are building those have a real good idea about, oh, I'm going to use that rock, but not that one.
Will you be making bricks for casting?
For casting. I'm not sure exactly where the question is going, but we'll be making bricks, and the bricks are part of the, anytime you're moving into a permanent situation. Today, bricks are kind of out of favor. It's a lot easier to build with something like concrete or steel or whatever. And so even bricks have kind of fallen out of favor, and a lot of brick buildings, while they look like they're brick, are just brick veneer. They just have brick on the outside and something else is actually holding up the building. But in our time period, any like very, very stable building, they're all made with brick. So, Parliament, right? It's a huge building. It's all made with brick. And that's we're going to do foundations. They would have done foundations and wells and fireplaces and entire buildings, as well as streets and all those kinds of things.
Are they making most of their bricks on site, or are they being shipped in from other places? Are both going on?
Most brick is probably, although it may seem like they're being imported. There'll be references to the idea of English brick in North America, but what they're really talking about is the size of the brick, not where it's from. I believe that most of the brick in North America was generally, especially early on, made right on location. Later on, you're getting, when you industrialize that, and then lots of transport is getting done, canal transport, railroad, that makes it more sense to make bricks in an industrial situation in one particular location and then ship bricks around. But earlier than that, we're making bricks wherever we're at using them.
Brian is in the chat. It says, part of the off-topic, unoriginal question I've been wanting to ask, how would you recommend for someone with limited experience to get into living history, and how plausible is it to make a career of?
Well, you can go back and find the Getting Started series. There's a whole playlist, and we spent a lot of time kind of thinking about that problem that people had. How do I get started in reenacting? How do I get started in living history? So we went through that. There's a 6, 7, 8 part series where we talk about how people can get started with that. So I'll point you to the Getting Started playlist. I'm sure Aaron will find that for me.
I'm looking for it.
The plausibility of turning it into a job, oh, well, that is a trickier question, and we covered that. We have covered that occasionally on the channel back in that time period. That's tough, and I mean, generally there are some people who do it without being connected to something like a historic site. But most people that make a living in historical reenacting are connected with historical sites in some way, shape, or form. Volunteering or just plain working there and getting paid. Now, the problem is 2020 and what's going to happen with historic sites in the future. I can imagine historic sites are under a massive quantity of pressure right now because of what's happening with COVID, etc. I don't know what the future of historic sites looks like. All I know is it's going to be even harder than it has been in the past decade, and it has not been easy for historic sites. But some people do work for historic sites and basically kind of do reenacting every day.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. Daniel Banks is a new member, and he's very excited that he can now nutmeg.
Yay!
Let's see him, Daniel. Throw him in there. Okay. I've got some super chat stuff to catch up on. Thanks so much, everybody. S.J. McGuire sends a thumbs up.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Denise Maloney Pyron sends a poultry pigeon pair thing that's flinging a cup of hot beverage
Look
at us.
out!
Oh.
Yeah, John Talley for fireplace on cabin. Could stone be used? I think we covered it.
Yes.
Like any rocks you find in creeks, or bricks better. Bricks are better.
Yeah.
05 Red Rex 1. Love you in the videos. Nice hat.
Thank you.
Katie Teets says, off topic, any recommendations for documentaries on the Revolutionary War or any of the founding fathers? I'd ask about social history too, but you already cover that.
I really like that John Adams piece that they did.
I did too.
Yeah.
I think that was an HBO piece, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was good.
But other ones per se, I don't watch a lot of documentaries, so I don't have any other suggestions. Do you have any?
My wife would. I don't.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Midwest Minuteman, Nutmeg Tavern. Live and educational videos are always great. Look forward to them every week.
Thank you.
Divide the coin amongst yourselves.
Ooh,
Very
fight over
political
it.
of you.
Fight over it. Okay.
Yeah, let's throw it in the middle and see who gets it. Who's quick. Sir Philip is a new member. Thank you very much. 05 Red Rex 1 says, Jazz!
Woo!
Very excited about that. Aaron Howitt, what's the end goal with the bricks you are making?
Well, I talked about that idea of permanent brick things, and you can use bricks for so many different things. Even our upcoming blacksmith shop. I mean, it's like maybe someday when we rebuild the forge area, we'll need bricks for that. So we'll definitely need bricks for, if we were going to do a hewn house, a log hewn house, we would need bricks for the fireplace and for the foundation areas. And there's just, it's like, as soon as you have that, these are uniform size, impervious to weather, all of a sudden, all kinds of projects open right up.
John Talley's in Super Chat just now. How would people know which types of rocks to use for a fireplace? That's only going to come from experience, right?
That's going to come from experience, and you can do things like, hey, I threw a cup of water on that rock, and it immediately went down into the rock. Don't use that one.
Yeah.
A hunk of granite, well, that probably hasn't absorbed any, water ever since the beginning of time. So you can kind of tell from the rock and just how it reacts. If you have a rock outcrop and you see, look, this rock is deteriorating because the weather has attacked it over the last 10 years or so, well, it's the wrong kind of rock to use. So there's a lot of different ways you can just look at the rock and see how it's reacting in its environment already to judge whether it would be good in a fire situation. You can also take a small one of these rocks. I think I'm going to use this kind of rock. You throw it in a fire, it's like, okay, I'm going to come back and see what it looks like tomorrow. Did it crack and break? Did it explode? We're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to come back to trade secrets and just like, there are a lot of things that people do even now that's like, most people would say, don't do that. That's not very safe or it could go wrong.
Right.
But they know how to do it and it works every time.
Sure.
So. Wow, we are 1,005 viewers strong.
Woo!
And this chat is popping, and bricks. Bricks has been our topic.
Bricks!
Thanks so much, guys. This is killer. Keltoid 5 shows up. Ever thought of a collaboration with Roy Underhill from the Woodwright Shop, 18th century meets 19th century?
Yeah.
How fun would that be?
Yeah, collaborations are always tricky, reaching out, and it's like which side does what and how that gets done. Roy Underhill and the work he did with PBS, and it's like it would be one of those. It is hard to reach out to someone who's that experienced and that far ahead of you in the field and say, hey, I want to do something with you. So
we love the idea of collaborations,
Yeah.
but man, are they hard to work out.
Yeah, they are.
Yep.
They are.
Really, really difficult. Okay, I think it's time to say thank you and farewell.
It has been a great Wednesday. It is so nice to come in out of the field, hard working on bricks, and be able to relax a little bit, come into the tavern. I know I'm not dressed right for the tavern today. I didn't want to, go and jump in the pond and then put on nice clothes. So, because I have to go back out there and work on bricks anyway. So, thank you for, allowing me to come in all stinky and sweaty and do this live stream. It's great to be able to come in and chat with you guys and talk about these topics. And thank you, Ryan, for doing all the hard work back there of intercepting all that conversation and interpreting it for me. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you, Aaron, for making this live stream happen technically, and you guys totally make this happen. Live chat and comments, and talking about our channel and sharing what we do, because I can't do it. So you guys make it happen. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Hope to see you Friday. Thanks for watching.